My wife divorced me and took everything. You'll die broken alone, she laughed. So, I donated plasma for $40. Then the nurse saw my blood test, and 3 men in suits rushed in. After 32 years, we finally found you. All right, Reddit. This happened 6 months ago, and I'm still trying to wrap my head around it. You'll die broke and alone, Ethan. Men like you always do. That was the last thing my ex-wife said to me on the night our divorce papers were finalized. Her voice sharp, cheerful, almost delighted at the idea of my life crumbling. I didn't know it then, but those words would replay in my mind for months, echoing in every dark, empty corner of my life. They were the spark that lit the fuse on everything that came after. 6 months later, I'm still trying to understand how my world managed to collapse and rebuild itself in ways I never saw coming. My name is Ethan Ward, 45 years old, and until not too long ago, I believed I had a normal, steady, predictable American life. The kind of life people joke about being boring but secretly wish they had. A stable job, a dependable routine, a long-term marriage, and a modest home that smelled faintly of old coffee and laundry detergent. I wasn't flashy. I wasn't ambitious in the cutthroat way some people are. I showed up, did my work, paid my bills, went home. I thought that was enough. For 17 years, I was married to Jessica Ward, 32 when we met, 42 when she left. Back then, I saw her as the bright, electric force in our life, someone who dreamed in color while I lived in grayscale. She liked luxury kitchens and European vacations. I liked weekend barbecues and quiet Sunday mornings. Somehow it worked. Or I thought it did. I grew up in a working-class neighborhood in Ohio. My dad was an electrician, the kind of man who smelled permanently of sawdust and engine oil. My mom worked part-time at the library and brought home boxes of donated books she thought I might like. They taught me simple things. Work hard, live within your means, take responsibility for the things you can control. Nothing revolutionary, but solid bedrock principles that had carried me through most of my adult life. I paid my way through state college, stocking grocery shelves from 10 p.m. to 2 a.m., then attended morning classes half awake and smelling like produce crate. When I finally finished my degree in marketing, I walked into my first full-time job with $18,000 in loans and a determination to pay every cent back. It took 6 years, but I did it. I was proud of that. I thought Jessica was too. My job at Morrison & Hartley, a mid-sized marketing firm, wasn't glamorous, but it was honest work. I started as a junior copywriter and carved my way up over nearly 2 decades until I became senior account manager, overseeing a team of 8. My reviews were always strong, clients trusted me, coworkers respected me. The work paid well enough, $92,000 a year plus bonuses. It wasn't flashy money, but it was stable, predictable, safe. But for Jessica, safe eventually became stagnant. She started comparing everything, our house, our car, our vacations, my title, my salary, to the shiny lives of our friends. Brandon and Ashley went to Europe every year. Lauren's husband bought her a Rolex for their anniversary. Someone else got promoted to partner at their firm. Someone else remodeled their kitchen. Someone else had a Tesla with Falcon doors. Every comparison chipped away at her pride. And then at me. Still, I stayed steady. I liked my life. I liked coming home at 5. I liked having weekends free. I liked being able to help my dad fix his deck or take my nephew to baseball games. I liked not being swallowed by work the way some of my peers were. But Jessica didn't see value in balance, only in status. Then the bottom dropped out. The company lost its 3 biggest clients in a 60-day stretch. Nothing I did wrong. Corporate buyouts, bankruptcies, budget cuts, but corporate needed someone to blame. Senior managers with long tenure and full benefits packages were expensive, so they cut 6 of us in a single day. I remember walking into our kitchen that afternoon, still numb, holding a cardboard box with my old desk clock and a photo of me and Jessica from a vacation she'd barely enjoyed. When I told her, her expression didn't soften with concern. It twisted. First panic, then anger. "What are we supposed to do now?" she demanded, as if I'd intentionally sabotaged us. I reassured her. Severance, unemployment, references, new applications. But she didn't hear any of it. "You're 45, Ethan. Companies don't want middle-aged men. This ruins everything." Everything meant her lifestyle, her expectations, her comparisons. Not our marriage. Not us. Just what she believed she deserved. And less than a week later, a process server knocked on our door and handed me divorce papers. She'd filed the day after my layoff. I spent the next weeks drowning in a legal fight I never saw coming. Her lawyer, Patricia Rothman, was a predator in heels. Sharp, calculated, relentless. She painted me as an irresponsible middle-aged man whose lack of ambition doomed the marriage. She turned my unemployment into evidence of incompetence. She ignored the 17 years I'd been the steady one, while Jessica hopped between part-time jobs and boutique business ventures that never produced a dollar. I burned through $8,000 in legal fees before we even reached court. Jessica's parents helped her. I didn't have that luxury. By the time it was over, I kept almost nothing. My clothes. My father's watch. A few boxes. Jessica got the house temporarily, then permanently once her legal fees came out of the sale proceeds. She got the car because it was in both names. She got half my 401k. Half the savings. Most of what remained went to pay lawyers. When the dust settled, I had $183 to my name and a key to a studio apartment that smelled like mildew and old carpet. The night the divorce finalized, she called me. Cheerful. Almost bubbly. Like she'd just won something. "I just wanted you to know," she said, "that you'll die alone and broke. Brandon says you were always dead weight." Brandon. My former coworker. My former best friend. The man I'd gotten hired at the firm 5 years earlier. The guy who'd stood beside me at my wedding. They were together. She said it like she was announcing a new job or a vacation plan. And then she laughed. Actually laughed. After she hung up, I sat in that tiny apartment staring at the wall while her words carved themselves into my bones. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I didn't punch anything. I just sat there, silent, with the sinking realization that the life I'd built for nearly 2 decades had been an illusion I'd believed in alone. The next months blurred into survival. I applied for 200 jobs, got 15 interviews, 3 final rounds, 0 offers. I wrote $25 blog posts on Fiverr, designed $50 social media packages, ate canned soup and the cheapest ramen I could find. I lost weight because hunger was cheaper than groceries. By month 3, I had $40 left. Rent was due in a week. That's when I saw the flyer on the telephone pole. Donate plasma. Earn $40. I'd walked past the donation center countless times. Never imagined I'd step inside. But desperation makes the unthinkable become reasonable. And then inevitable. The building looked like Hope's waiting room. Fluorescent lights flickering like dying stars, the smell of antiseptic masking something older, sadder. People sat in plastic chairs that had survived 100 lives before this one. Each of us clinging to the same invisible thread. A nurse named Amy took me in, drew blood, smiled kindly, and told me she'd be right back with my test result. 5 minutes passed. Then 10. Then 20. From the window, I watched her expression shift from confusion to shock to something like fear. She called someone. Then someone else. Soon 3 staff members were huddled around a screen, whispering, pointing, staring straight at me. And then 3 men in suits stormed through the front door. Not cheap suits. Not business casual. These were power suit. The kind worn by men who make decisions that ripple across entire industries. The man in front, silver hair, commanding presence, walked straight to me. His eyes were shining. "After 32 years, he whispered, we finally found you." He looked like a man who just watched a miracle walk into a strip mall clinic. "I'm sorry," I said slowly, my voice sounding smaller than I wanted. Who are you? He blinked, remembered himself, and straightened his tie. My name is Robert Sterling. I'm the CEO of Sterling Pharmaceuticals. And Mr. Ward. He exhaled like he was trying to steady the weight of what he was about to say. What we found in your blood is extraordinary. They moved me out of the cramped screening room and into a private office in the back. Dark wood desk, leather chairs, framed diplomas, the whole thing looking wildly out of place in a rundown plasma center. The kind of office where serious conversations happen. The kind of room I never expected to be sitting in while wearing a faded t-shirt and jeans I'd bought on clearance 5 years ago. There were 3 men in suit. Robert Sterling, the plasma center director, and a 3rd man with thoughtful eyes and the kind of calm that made you think he'd seen too many emergencies to be rattled by anything normal. I'm Philip Hayes, the calm one said. Head of research at Sterling. Robert sat across from me, folded his hands, and studied my face like he was trying to memorize it. When he finally spoke, his voice carried the kind of gravity you normally only hear in hospital rooms and courtrooms. Mr. Ward, are you familiar with a condition called Kellerman syndrome? No, I said. Should I be? He opened a folder, sliding it toward me. Pages full of charts, diagrams, and lines of text I couldn't begin to decipher. It all looked like medical static. Numbers and terms that meant nothing but felt important. Kellerman's is a genetic disorder, Robert said quietly. It attacks the nervous system in children. Usually appears between 3 and 8 years old. At first, it just looks like clumsiness. A kid drops things more often, fumbles with buttons, has trouble doing things they could do easily before. He paused and tapped the page once with a fingertip. Then it progresses. Walking becomes difficult. Fine motor skills deteriorate. The nervous system misfires. Eventually, the signals from the brain to the body get weaker, then stop. Some children decline cognitively as well. Not always, but often. How bad does it get? I asked. His jaw tightened. It's universally fatal. Average life expectancy after diagnosis is about 18 months. A few children make it 2 years. Very few make it 3. There is no cure. He took a slow breath. Or rather, there wasn't. He reached into the folder and pulled out a photograph that had clearly been handled too many times. Slightly faded, edges soft. A little girl in a wheelchair, dark hair, bright eyes, smiling like she had no idea how unfair the world had become. This is my daughter, Rebecca, Robert said, barely above a whisper. She was 9 when she was diagnosed. One day she tripped at soccer practice and couldn't seem to stop tripping after that. We thought it was just a phase, or maybe she needed glasses. It took 3 doctors before one recognized the signs. He stared at the photo like he was somewhere else entirely. I spent over $2 million chasing every hope I could find, he continued. Trials in Europe. Research in Asia. Experimental treatments here. Alternative nonsense that probably did nothing except give us a reason to keep getting out of bed in the morning. His voice shook and then steadied again, iron reforming around grief. None of it worked. I watched my daughter lose the ability to walk, then feed herself, then hold a pen. She died 3 months before her 12th birthday. The room went completely still. Even the hum of the air conditioning felt like it had lowered out of respect. I'm sorry, I said softly. The words felt small compared to the story. But I still don't understand what that has to do with me. That was when Dr. Hayes spoke. After Rebecca passed, he said, Robert sold his software company and founded Sterling Pharmaceuticals with a single mission: find a treatment for Kellerman's. For 32 years we've been researching this disease. We've screened hundreds of thousands of blood samples, looking for very specific genetic markers that might help us design a therapy. He glanced at Robert, then back at me. And you, Robert said, have them. I stared at him. Have what? A genetic mutation so rare, Dr. Hayes said, that we estimate maybe 3 to 5 people on Earth possess it. Your blood produces antibodies that target the defective pathways involved in Kellerman's, not just to slow them down, to reverse them, to stop the disease completely. You're telling me my blood can cure this thing? I asked, almost laughing because it sounded insane. Yes, Robert replied. No hesitation. We ran your sample 3 times here, then sent it to our main lab in Boston for independent verification. They ran it twice more. Same results. It isn't a fluke. You were born with a mutation that produces a protein we've been trying to engineer synthetically for decades. I leaned back, staring at them, feeling like the room had tilted sideways. So what? You just take more of my blood and turn it into medicine. In simple terms, yes, Dr. Hayes said. In more complicated terms, we process your plasma, isolate and replicate the key components, and formulate them into an injectable therapy. But your plasma is the starting point. Without you, there is no drug. Robert folded his hands again and met my eyes. Mr. Ward, I would like to offer you a contract, he said. We need ongoing access to your plasma. This isn't a one-time donation. It would involve a schedule that works for you. We'll handle all medical testing, monitoring, and logistics. He took a breath. Our initial offer is $15 million. $10 million as an upfront payment. $5 million distributed over the next 5 years as you continue to donate. My mind went blank. $15 million. An hour earlier I'd been mentally rationing how many cans of soup I could buy with $40. Now a billionaire was offering more money than I could even conceptualize in exchange for something my own body just casually produced without asking my permission. I need time to think, I said, because my brain had officially hit capacity. Of course, Robert said immediately. He pulled a card from his pocket and slid it across the desk. My personal cell number is on there. Call me anytime, day or night. We will not pressure you. But I hope you'll consider it. There are children, his voice tightened. Children who do not have much time. Your blood could change that. They released me after what felt like an eternity of signing temporary consent forms, scheduling follow-up tests, and promising I wouldn't vanish off the grid. I walked out of that clinic with the same $40 in my account, but also with a business card in my pocket that felt like it weighed 10 pounds. Back in my tiny apartment, I sat on the futon and stared at the card resting on my knee. Robert Sterling, CEO. Direct number. Email. Corporate address. Then I did the only thing that made sense. I called my sister. Kate, I said when she picked up, you're going to think I'm high, but I swear I'm not. I need you to listen. I laid everything out. The plasma center. The test. The 3 men in suits. Kellerman syndrome. Rebecca. The mutation. The 15 million. She was silent for a long beat. Ethan, she said finally, you need a lawyer. A good one. This isn't a scratch-off ticket win. This is intellectual property, medical rights, and long-term licensing all rolled into one. I can't afford a lawyer, I said automatically. You're about to be able to afford a whole firm, she shot back. But right now, you need someone who knows pharmaceutical contract. I know someone from law school, Diana. She's intense in a good way. Don't sign a single thing until she looks at it. Not a consent form, not a napkin, nothing. Got it? Got it. 2 days later, I sat in a glass-walled conference room in downtown Chicago feeling like I'd snuck into a world that didn't belong to me. Diana Patterson walked in exactly on time. Early 40s, dark blazer, hair pulled back, expression cool and alert. She shook my hand firmly and got straight to the point. Your sister briefed me, she said, dropping a folder on the table. I've spent the last 48 hours combing through Sterling Pharmaceuticals' financials, trial history, and patent filings. And let me start by saying this. $15 million is a lot of money to an individual, but it's a laughably low opening bid for what your blood might be worth to them. It's more money than I've ever seen in my life, I said honestly. That's exactly why they offered it, she replied. They're counting on you being overwhelmed. But here's the reality. Kellerman's may be a rare disease, but rare doesn't mean unprofitable. Chronic, life-threatening pediatric conditions with no current cure can generate billions in revenue over time. And you're not just contributing a small insight. You are the source of the therapy. She opened a spreadsheet on her laptop and turned it toward me. Projected markets, estimated treatment costs, conservative adoption rate. Even if they price treatment at the low end, she said, tapping a number that already made my stomach lurch, Sterling is looking at a multi-billion-dollar market over the next decade. 15 million is a tip. A very generous tip, but still a tip. So what do? I asked. You let me negotiate, she said calmly. Here's what we're asking for. 18 million upfront, not 10. 5% royalty on every treatment sold, in perpetuity. No sunset clause. Comprehensive medical care for life for you, including full coverage for anything related to your genetic condition or the donation process. A seat on their medical advisory board with voting rights on all matters related to Kellerman's. And a clause that allows you to negotiate with other companies if Sterling fails to develop or bring the treatment to market in a reasonable timeframe. I stared at her like she'd just recited a spell. They're never going to agree to that, I said. Oh, they will, she answered, not even blinking. Because what's their alternative? Walk away from the only person on Earth they've found in 32 years of searching? Watch you take your mutation to one of their competitors? Without you, they have nothing but a heartbreaking story and a very expensive research graveyard. Her confidence was unsettling, and oddly comforting. The negotiations took weeks. I didn't attend the calls. I just sat in my small apartment while emails and phone calls flew back and forth between Diana and Sterling's legal team. Robert pushed back hard on the royalty percentage, tried to cap it at 2%, then 3%, then 4%. Diana held firm at 5% with a minimum annual payment built in, so even if sales dipped, my compensation wouldn't crash. The advisory board seat sparked even more resistance. They didn't want to set the precedent of giving a donor voting power. Diana argued that I wasn't just a donor. I was an ongoing research asset without whom there would be no product. They compromised. A seat with voting rights on anything involving Kellerman's research and distribution, but limited authority on unrelated company business. 3 weeks after I'd walked into that shabby plasma center hoping to make $40, Diana called and told me to refresh my banking app. I did. An $8 million wire had just landed. 10 minutes later, another transfer hit, a staggered setup between accounts and trusts Diana had arranged. By the end of the day, my total immediate payout was $18 million, with legally binding contracts guaranteeing 5% royalties on every future treatment, plus minimum annual payments that outstripped my old salary before I even opened my eyes in the morning. I sat on the futon and stared at the screen until the numbers blurred. From $183 to more money than I could wrap my head around. My first call was to my landlord. I paid a year's rent in advance. My second call was to my mother. Mom, I said, remember how I told you things were looking up? I need you to sit down. Even as I explained, part of me waited to wake up in that same depressing apartment with the same final notice on the counter and the same emptiness in my account. But the numbers stayed. The emails stayed. The contracts were real. And yet, after the adrenaline faded, a strange, hollow feeling remained. I had money. More than I'd ever imagined having. But I was still divorced. Still sleeping in a studio that felt like a storage unit. Still waking up without a job, without a real sense of purpose. Money had solved survival. It hadn't solved meaning. That was when Diana brought up something I hadn't considered. You should start a foundation, she said over coffee one afternoon. Sterling is a corporation. They'll charge market rates, and they should. It's how they sustain operations and fund research. But you have a unique moral stake in this. You can create a structure that makes sure this treatment reaches families who can't afford it. A foundation? I repeated. Yes, she said. Use a portion of your upfront payment and some of your future royalties to subsidize care. You'll get tax benefits which your accountant will love. But more importantly, you'll have control, a say in how this treatment is distributed. You can ensure that kids don't die just because their parents can't write a massive check. I didn't answer right away. But the idea lodged itself somewhere deep and refused to move. A week later, sitting across from Robert in his company's boardroom, I brought it up. He listened, eyes thoughtful, hands folded. I think it's the right thing to do, he said quietly when I finished. When Rebecca got sick, we were lucky. We could afford experimental trials, travel, anything that even hinted at hope. Most families don't have that. If you want to create a foundation, Sterling will support it. We talked names, mission statements, logistics. In the end we called it the Ward Sterling Foundation for Kellerman Research and Access, at Robert's insistence. He wanted both our names on it. This is bigger than either of us, he said. We built this together, whether we planned to or not. The mission was simple on paper, impossibly big in practice. No child diagnosed with Kellerman syndrome would be denied treatment because their family couldn't afford it. Sterling agreed to provide the therapy to foundation-approved families at cost. I would use foundation funds, seeded with my money and future royalties, to cover the gap between that cost and whatever insurance or family contributions couldn't reach. For the first time since my life had imploded, I felt something shift inside me. Purpose. Not the kind that comes from deadlines or performance reviews or hitting quarterly target. Something quieter but heavier. The realization that I could actually change the trajectory of someone else's life. Not metaphorically, but literally. Kids who had been handed a death sentence could get a second chance because of something my body happened to make. Because of the same blood I'd once considered selling just to keep the lights on. The first child we ever helped through the foundation was an 8-year-old girl named Lily Hawthorne. I still remember opening her file for the first time. It was a thick packet. Doctor's notes, therapy evaluations, insurance denials, photographs taken over the past 2 years. In the oldest picture she was smiling in a soccer uniform, ponytail swinging, one knee scraped from what looked like a normal childhood fall. But the later photos told a different story. Her smile dimmed. Her hands trembled. Eventually she sat in a wheelchair, her small fingers curled tightly against her palms. Her parents, Tom and Michelle, had drained everything. Savings gone. Retirement gone. Credit cards maxed out. Their home equity nearly exhausted. They'd started a crowdfunding campaign that barely made a dent in the $180,000 a year treatment estimate they'd been given. And that was assuming Lily survived long enough to receive it. I read the file 3 times. Then I set it down and said aloud to my empty apartment, "We're doing this." Sterling processed her case immediately. We covered every cent. 3 months later, I met Lily in person at the Sterling Research Facility. She was in the occupational therapy room, sitting at a small table covered in colorful block. The trainer asked her to pick one up. Her left hand shook, just a little, but enough that my stomach tightened watching her struggle. Then she closed her fingers around a block, lifted it, and placed it carefully on top of another. Her mom gasped like she'd just witnessed a resurrection. "Mom, did you see?" Lily beamed. "I picked it up." Michelle broke. Tears fell in heavy drops as she covered her mouth with her hand. Tom wrapped an arm around her, his own eyes shining. I stood there uselessly, hands in my pockets, feeling something in my chest crack open. Hope, gratitude, fear. All of it tangled together. Later, Michelle showed me a video taken 2 weeks earlier. Lily running in their backyard. Running. Laughing. Chasing their dog in wide circles like any other kid. "You gave us our daughter back," she said, gripping my hands so tightly it hurt. "We were planning her funeral. Now she's arguing with me about what she wants to be for Halloween. I didn't know what to say. So I just nodded, my throat thick, heart beating too fast. It was the first time since the divorce that I cried, and these finally weren't tears from loss. Over the next 6 months, the foundation helped 42 children. 42 families who had been bracing themselves for the worst suddenly had something new to hold onto. Sterling updated me monthly through detailed progress reports. Some kids walked again. Some regained fine motor control. Some started school after months or years confined to their homes. Every time I opened an update, it felt like peeling back the edge of a miracle. Robert and I made it a tradition to meet for lunch once a month. He treated me like a true partner. Not just a donor, not just a financial collaborator, but someone walking this road with him. Someone helping carry the grief he'd lived with for 3 decades. He'd show me new data, early-stage research, the next directions his team wanted to push. And more than once, he'd look at me over his coffee and say, softly, "Rebecca would have liked you." The first time he said it, I wasn't sure how to respond. But the 4th or 5th time, I realized the words weren't meant to be answered, they were meant to be shared. A tiny piece of his daughter's memory woven into the work we were doing. Then, 2 months ago, everything shifted again, only this time, the shift wasn't a blessing. It was a revelation. I got a call from Diana one quiet afternoon. "Ethan, have you been following the news about Morrison and Hartley?" "No," I said. "Why would I?" "You should sit down." She sent me a link. The headline made my stomach drop through the floor. Former marketing executives charged in multi-million-dollar embezzlement scheme. My finger hovered over the screen as I scrolled, breath tight in my chest. For 3 years, someone inside Morrison and Hartley had created fake vendor accounts with names like Strategic Brand Consulting and Premier Media Advisors. They'd submitted fraudulent invoices, approved them, and quietly funneled payments into offshore accounts. Over $4.3 million had been stolen. And the names listed as the primary defendants were Brandon Walsh and Jessica Ward. The room felt too small. The air felt too thin. I read the details twice, then a third time, trying to convince myself my eyes were playing tricks. But the facts were right there. Brandon, head of vendor relations, had full authority to approve contracts up to $50,000. Jessica, formerly in accounts payable, knew every weakness in the payment system. They'd started small, $5,000 invoices no one looked twice at. Over the past 3 years, the numbers grew bolder. One shell company alone had billed $780,000. The part that hit me hardest wasn't even that they'd been stealing. It was the timeline. The article stated explicitly that the financial strain caused by the embezzlement contributed to the firm's layoffs, including mine. The layoffs that had destroyed my marriage. The loss of income that triggered Jessica's divorce filing. The domino effect that had shoved me into a studio apartment with $183 left to my name. They hadn't just betrayed me personally. They had stolen from the company. They had endangered employees' livelihood. They had helped create the crisis that cost me everything. And all while spending stolen money on beaches, luxury condos, and new cars. I sat in silence for a long time. I expected rage, but what I felt first was numbness. The kind of numbness that shows up after you've been hit too many times to react. Then, slowly, something inside me hardened. Justice wasn't a fantasy after all. It had simply arrived on its own timeline. Diana called again later that night. "The federal prosecutors want to speak with you," she said. "You're not in trouble, far from it. They want your testimony about the company's financial environment during your last year there. Your timeline helps confirm motive." When I met with the prosecutors, they already had most of the evidence they needed. But my account helped connect certain dots. About Brandon's sudden lifestyle changes, about Jessica's comments on money, about the timing of my layoff. They got sloppy, one prosecutor told me. Luxury cars. Trips they shouldn't have been able to afford. Bills paid in cash. Once someone in accounting spotted the discrepancies, the rest unraveled fast. I left the meeting with a strange mix of emotions: vindication, sadness, disbelief. I thought that was the end of it. I was wrong. 1 week later, my phone rang. Unknown number. I almost ignored it, but something made me answer. Ethan? The voice was small, shaky. I recognized it instantly. Jessica. For a moment, I didn't speak. I just let the silence sit between us like a wall. Ethan, I need help, she said, her breath catching. Brandon and we're in trouble. Serious trouble. Lawyers, court fees. We're going to lose everything. The irony was almost comedic if it wasn't so heartbreaking. I gave her nothing in return. Just silence. Please, she whispered. We were married for 17 years. That has to count for something, doesn't it? I closed my eyes, remembering her voice the night of our divorce. You'll die alone and broke. Brandon says I should have left you years ago. Good luck with your sad little life. Her laughter. Jessica, I said quietly, do you remember what you told me the night our divorce finalized? She started crying. I was angry. I didn't mean. You meant every word, I said evenly. And you made choices. You stole. You lied. You left the moment things got hard. You tried to break me. And now you want me to save you from the consequences you created. We'll pay it back, she pleaded. We'll make it right. Please, no, I said simply. What? She sounded stunned, as if no one had ever denied her anything. No, I repeated. I'm not doing anything to you. I'm simply refusing to use my money to protect you from the justice system. You're going to let me go to prison, she choked. I'm not letting anything happen to you, I said. You did this. Not me. Not the company. You. And for the record, Jessica, you were wrong. I'm not alone. I'm not broke. And I'm finally doing something meaningful with my life. The quiet that followed was heavy and full of all the things she'd never expected to hear. Good luck with your life, I said softly. Don't call me again. And then I hung up. Yesterday, the sentencing came down. Brandon, 7 years in federal prison. Jessica, 5 years. Full restitution ordered. Assets seized. Everything gone. I didn't attend the hearing. I didn't need to. Diana called with the update. Kate called an hour later. So, she said, how do you feel? I thought about it. Honestly? Nothing, I said. Just nothing. It's over. They're not my problem anymore. I spent that evening sitting in my new home, a quiet, warm place I'd moved into a month earlier. A place that didn't smell like old carpets or regret. Place with a sleepy dog named Max curled at my feet. My life wasn't perfect. It wasn't magically healed. But it was mine again. And for the first time in a long time, it felt like it mattered. The foundation was expanding, adding new research branches for similar genetic disorders. Sterling had asked if I'd considered joining the board full-time. I wasn't sure yet. Maybe. Maybe not. I didn't need the money. I just wanted to do something that made the world better than I found it. Kate joked that plasma donation was the best life decision I'd ever made. Technically, I told her, I never even got the $40. She laughed. The greatest unpaid donation in history. Maybe she was right. Now, as I sit here watching Max twitch in his sleep, probably dreaming of chasing squirrels, I realize something important. My life didn't end when Jessica left. It didn't end when I lost my job. It didn't end in that tiny studio when I thought I had nothing left. It began again. And for the first time in years, the quiet in my home isn't lonely. It's peaceful, hopeful, alive. And so am I.